But what I'm going to share with you and speak to you is neither dull, nor should we sleep on it. I think we've done enough sleeping, so it's time to wake up and think about how to change things. We've had a very interesting morning, very informative discussion on the jurisprudence that has evolved over the years and on the way that that jurisprudence has helped shape a new narrative. But the discussion that follows from now onwards, that's what's going to really make a difference, because that's the discussion that's going to tell us how do we change things, where are the problems, and how to make a difference. Let me first start by thanking the organizers, UN Women and the FJA, for organizing this wonderful event for a topic that is very close to my heart, which is being discussed today at a regional level. And I say this not just simply as a woman judge sitting here, but I say this as the voice of the many women in the justice sector, the many women who are not able to say some of the things that I wish to share with you. The next 2 days are going to be very important as you discuss various aspects in your panels and you debate on what is meaningful inclusion and how to achieve meaningful inclusion. It's important to give some perspective, the gender perspective, on why meaningful inclusion is important. For me personally, this discussion is critical because it addresses three very important topics, three very important issues, which I, as a judge over 13 years, have been trying to voice out how relevant and important they are. Number one is the lack of women's representation in the judiciary. Number two is the lack of a gender perspective in the judiciary. And number three is to make our system more gender responsive, not just for the judges and the lawyers, but more specifically for the female litigants. It's a very tough environment. It's a very man environment. And it's very difficult to just say access to justice, come to the courts. It's very, very difficult for these women who come from very difficult home lives, in very difficult circumstances, to come to our system. So we need to know how to address these problems. And you heard Justice Shah in the morning when he shared some very dismal data to tell us what the problems are and how those problems are translating into bringing less women in the judiciary. They're kind of running away, or they're not interested in this profession, and there has to be a reason. We have to understand that reason before we go and take action and try and include more women in this. It's also important to look at the study. I think the study is very good because it brings out the good jurisprudence. It brings out the manner in which a change in the narrative can help change the way people think. But now I will begin by sort of doing the part that is not so exciting, but bringing out more dismal facts and more dismal issues that need to be spoken about. So why is it important when we look at women's representation in the judiciary? Why is it important? And Justice Shah told us and gave us the demographics. 49% of the population are women. So when you don't have women sitting on the bench, when you don't have enough women lawyers, prosecutors, women in the Advocate General's office, Attorney General's office, women on the decision-making table, you actually are not listening to the voices of those 49% of the women. You're not taking into account their stories. And when we as judges hear cases and write judgments, we're actually telling a story. We're actually telling a story about the litigant who's come to the court. So it does matter whose story you're telling. And if you're going to write about the woman's story, not from her perspective, but from your own perspective or from the given narrative, then you're doing her a big disservice, because that narrative is drowning out her voice and it's drowning down her rights. We're ignoring what really matters for her, such as her right to dignity, her right to privacy, her right to equality, her right to fair treatment. Now, inclusion goes to the root of these fundamental rights: the right to access to justice, the right to be treated equally, and the right of participation and opportunity with dignity. And when I say with dignity, I underline with dignity, because I don't want to beg and plead for that chance. I don't want to beg and plead for opportunity. I want it to present itself to me. I don't want to have to say, I'm here, please listen to me. I want to be heard without having to say that. So where is the problem? And let me tell you that I have spoken to many women judges, many women lawyers, prosecutors over the past 1 month, just to understand where the problems are and what these women have to say. And I think all of them unanimously believe that the problems are visibility, they're just not seen even though they're there. Acknowledgement of their work, their participation, and their merit. Inclusion, they're never considered, they say, for anything. And participation, their involvement is limited. It's restricted and it's limited. So these women say that at least give us a chance, at least hear us, at least consider us, and most importantly, please talk to us. When you're going to think about how to make a difference, talk to the women. So I think this is very important to understand that for meaningful inclusion, you first have to know what is meaningful to these women, not what is meaningful to the system, or not what is meaningful to what I think is meaningful, but what is meaningful to these women. And that's what will make the inclusion meaningful. This leads us to something that I've spoken about very often, and that is the gender perspective. The gender perspective is critical to any judicial system. Unless you don't have a gender perspective, you're not going to be able to give the right to that woman in its whole form. You won't really recognize the issues that she has spoken about, and you won't be giving her the justice that she has come to seek. So it's important to understand what this gender perspective is. And the way I sum it up is that the system basically is one that's made by men. The laws are made by men. The policies are made by men. And it's all given to us. It was given to me when I became a judge. And I was told for my friends in English, my English friends rather, in Urdu I'll just say it, कि madam ऐसे ही होता है यहाँ पे. So I've learned this, कि ऐसे ही होता है, meaning this is the way it's done. This is the way we do it. And I'm here to say, no, ऐसा नहीं होता. I can't do it that way. So please try and understand that certain things I cannot do. And you have to change the way you do things so that I can be included in the fraternity, so that I can be included in the justice sector just as much as anyone else. So let's look at this from the jurisprudential point of view. We heard about the great judgments. And yes, we've come a long way in recognizing the rights of women. We've come a long way in recognizing that these rights are connected to dignity and life and quality and privacy. It is important. But more important than that is that we have to understand that there is a mindset. And that mindset is very, very strong and very prevalent in our society. And it comes out in the courtroom. It comes out even in just the way our court conducts business. It comes out in the way we speak. It comes out in the language that we use. So when we speak about things like gender-based violence or rape cases, when we speak about harassment issues, when we speak about offenses against children, it's very important to keep in mind the victim's perspective, because it's the victim's story, and the judgment is for the victim, not for the accused. We are trying to understand what the victim felt. And so in that, I think it's important to understand and underline that the gender perspective is important. Let's not rely on customs and traditions and presumptions and assumptions and what I think I understand of how things will be. So it's important to understand that it is the victim's story. So when a woman walks into a courtroom and says that this is a complaint of marital rape, then the judge is not supposed to sit and think about it that, nee, this is a private matter. This is a family matter. Please don't talk about this in court. If she has had the courage to come to the court, she has then not looking for what her uncle or father or mother would say to her, but she wants to know what the judge is going to say to her as per the law. And the judge has to say what the law says, not what he or she thinks, what they think is right, what they think is wrong. When she comes to seek a divorce, we don't say, nay, for the sake of your children, please go back home. No, that's not how it works. If she's managed to come, then give her what she wants if she's entitled to it. But don't assume that for the benefit of the family or to preserve the family, it is your place to tell her that she needs to go back home. When it comes to rape cases, it's scary, though the language that we use and the way we think. And we still continue, despite the stellar judgments, despite the fact that we have judges who recognize scientific evidence, recognize that merely statement of the victim is enough. We have our judgments continue, particularly in the district courts and unfortunately in the high courts as well, to use words like habituated. She's habituated, or that she's divorced, or that she's a widow, so we don't really know whether this was rape or not. And also to blur the difference between rape and consent. I really liked what Sapna said today, that, you know, the offense of rape takes place on the body of the woman. That's what has to be kept in mind. That is so fundamental. And even though we have judgments that say previous character doesn't matter, we now look at previous character through behavior. So we start analyzing her behavior, and we start assuming that we understand better how women under trauma react. I mean, I'm not an expert, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know how women under trauma react. And so I can't say that this is not how a woman would behave or would react. We've said in our judgments that resistance marks are not necessary. You don't have to show resistance. But yet we assume in the court that marks of resistance are necessary. And let me ask all of you, do all of you know what marks of resistance look like? Are you experts on that? Do you understand that this is a mark of resistance and this is not a mark of resistance? So why are we relying on things we don't understand? And if we think they are relevant, then let's rely on what the experts say. Let's start calling in the experts and ask them what they think. But that's not the point. The point is that she says it's rape, and we have to look at what the role of the court is, the gender perspective. Now, my time is short and my list is very long. I could go on forever to explain what the gender perspective can do and can't do. But I think what is important is, and what I want to say is, that the gender perspective is what makes the system more inclusive. And the more we understand and respect the gender perspective, the more we try to include the gender perspective, the more we will make our system inclusive. And for that, we have to be willing to understand that there is a different way of thinking. And we have to respect that different way of thinking. And we have to respect the fact that while I and my colleagues might come to the same conclusion in the law, my reasons might be very different. My understanding may be very different because it's based on a different premise, because it's based on my life experiences. It's based on my perspective, which is the gender perspective, which is what is important. And this, unfortunately, can't be done through training alone. So here I have a question, particularly, or I leave a thought, particularly for Justice Shah, that it's not just about training. And I think judges now and court systems should now look at what is their role in creating awareness. What is their role in putting things out to society and bringing judges with society, connecting the two to make society understand what rights are, where they stand, and what it means. I mean, is it necessary that we have an intermediary in the middle who's going to do the translation for us? Or is it time now that we think of how we can, as women judges, as communities, start reaching out to our people, to the people whose rights we're protecting, and see what we can tell them and how we can tell them. Different countries have done it in different ways, and there's a lot going on. The Women Judges Association does a lot that way, and there are many other associations, and we can talk about that. But I think this is important to think about, that it's not just capacity building and training. You have to change the way people think. And how will you change the way people think? So while we have these great judgments, enforcement is poor. Enforcement is poor. You don't see people, you still see women coming for inheritance. You still see women struggling over custody rights. Rape has increased, but convictions have not increased. So there is an enforcement problem. And then there's also an acknowledgement problem. So while if the High Court has given a judgment, there may be 2-3 different views. The Supreme Court might also have several different views. So the district judiciary is not sure which view they should subscribe to. But there are many issues and areas where the views are very clear. But you don't see courts following it. You don't see lawyers citing the law. So maybe we need to think about this as well, and we need to talk about why our judgments aren't being enforced. Why is it? I mean, I'm not just writing it for the sake of filling up paper. There is a whole reason why I'm writing it. There is a whole reason that someone has come to me and sought their rights. So why is it that my judgment is just on a piece of paper and I don't see it being enforced? When we've said a woman is entitled to inheritance in any circumstances, why isn't she given her inheritance? When we've said that a woman can ask for khula and doesn't need to explain it, why isn't she given that khula within 3 months' time? Why does it drag on for a year or 2 years? So we have to ask ourselves these questions, and I think first and foremost, we as members of the justice sector should ask ourselves. The second part of the gender perspective, which I think is vital and critical, is the language that we use. It's very important for this sector to look at the language that it uses. Our language, I'm sorry, but it's very harsh. It's very, very harsh on women. We don't even know how to address our women, and the only way we know how to show respect to our women is by equating them to our mothers and our sisters and our wives. Well, I don't need respect because I'm a mother, wife, or someone's sister. I need respect because I'm Ayesha Malik. That's it. That's the only reason. So writing is very important. The language that we use is very important. The manner in which we tell the story, the vocabulary that we use is very important. The adjectives that we use is important. And most important, if we keep using the masculine pronoun for everything, policeman, chairman, if everyone is a man at the end of the day, then the gender perspective is again lost, because you keep perpetuating the same stereotype that everything comes from a man. I make a conscious effort in my judgments, and I've started using they, or else I use the title so that I don't have to use the he or she pronoun. But that's just my effort in order to get away from making my judgment look very masculine. So writing is important. Then the speech that we use is important. And we heard Sana today tell us how speech matters, how words matter, and how we can be very cruel with the words that we use. But as lawyers, as prosecutors, and most importantly, as judges, we have to be kind with the words that we use. We have to think about the words that we use, because it's the words that get her justice. It's not that judgment and me saying she's entitled to, the right to dignity, but it's the way I say that she's entitled to dignity, that I first give her dignity before I can expect anyone else to give her dignity. So I think as you talk through your sessions today, it's important to think about these problems. Most important is what everyone has been saying this since morning, the victim's perspective. This is very important. It all follows in with the gender perspective, the language, the victim's perspective. And unfortunately, our system, particularly our criminal jurisprudence, is geared and fixated on the accused. We think about the accused's right, but we don't think about the victim's right. But when it comes to women and gender-based violence and issues pertaining to women, we must think of the victim. We must think of the difficult circumstances in which she has come to the court, what she wants from the court, what she's trying to tell the court. And I often tell my children that there's a difference between hearing someone and listening to someone. So we really have to listen. We don't have to hear them. We have to listen to what they're saying so that we understand what they're saying. Now let's move on to something that you're going to be talking about, and that is representation of women in the judiciary. You've heard the figures, and I think there's no secret now, we're really lagging behind. It's really sad to say that it took 75 years for a woman to come to the Supreme Court. That's a very long time. We were the last country in Asia to bring a woman to the Supreme Court. And in our high courts, there are only 5. I think that's also extremely sad. When I was appointed to the High Court, I was the only woman there, and I was the only woman there after some 20 years. And when I left the High Court, I left one colleague, Alia, and she's still now the only woman there. So I think this is very important. In the district judiciary, while the ratio is better, I think it's important to recognize that women in the district judiciary fall behind when it comes to leadership positions. They fall behind when it comes to responsibilities. They fall behind when it comes to discussions and decision making, because they're not included. And I think it's important now to start including women, start discussing with the women so that you get the larger perspective of what to deal with and how to come to some conclusion. As an institution, this is the response that we need in order to be inclusive. So maybe women are not in the decision-making forums on those tables, but nothing is stopping the decision makers from reaching out to the women. Nothing is stopping them. Nothing is stopping them from saying, I have to take these decisions, so what's your take on it? What's your perspective? What can I do that will make a difference, that will make me more inclusive? Nothing stops those people. So to the decision makers, this is something you can think about. Reach out and ask the women and ask them what they need or how they can, in whatever given situation, particularly when it comes to representation of women in the judiciary. Ask the women to point out where there are other good women who are good for elevations and appointments. An effort is required, and more than an effort, I think what has to be done is now we have to have concrete plans. We must have plans, actionable plans, or actionable agendas, and then we must monitor those, and we must report on those, and we must say that, listen, this is what we said when we attended this symposium, and now 6 months down the line, these are the concrete steps that we have taken. Otherwise, next year, we'll be standing again at some symposium, and Justice Shah will again be repeating these figures, and they'll be updated, and they'll be even more dismal than they are now. Because we really need to ask ourselves, why aren't women joining this sector? What is it? I've been in the sector 13 years, and a challenge it has been. There's no doubt. But it's been a great opportunity. It's been an absolute wonderful opportunity, and along the way, I've made great friends. And most of my friends happen to be my male colleagues. But I tell you, it's really how you present yourself as well to the women out there. It's how you present yourself, how you conduct yourself, and the positivity that you bring to your work. That also makes a difference. So I think women also have to think about how they want to project themselves and how they want to be seen in the sector. So I thought before I conclude and just share a little bit of what I've understood about inclusivity, I'd share some of my stories of why inclusivity matters. And these are all, some of them are on a lighter note, so I hope that you will enjoy them with me just as much as I do. One of the biggest issues for me is my name. So everybody is very confused on how to address me. Am I a madam? Am I a sir? Am I lordship? Am I ladyship? Very complicated. Sometimes I become excellency, and people don't know how to address me. Well, it's very simple. It's a court. There's a formal language. It's not very complicated. So, there should not be confusion on how to address me. And just like you've learned over years how to address the male judge, please learn how to address me as well, so that we don't get confused. The other issue is how to invite me. So I'm even today, whenever I'm invited to an event with my spouse, I'm invited as Mr. and Mrs. Justice Ayesha Malik. And I always ask, who's Mr. Justice Ayesha Malik? I don't know who he is. And I don't even take those cards home now because it's embarrassing for me. So just because we're used to saying Mr. and Mrs. Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, I am not Mr. and Mrs. Justice Ayesha Malik. My husband has a name, his own identity. So please, when you are going to address me and invite me, please know how to address me and invite me. And while it's entertaining, but for me, 13 years down the line, I feel sad now that, 13 years, and this is how inclusive it is, that the system still doesn't know how to invite me. So, this is also something to think about. And then another one of my, sort of the bane of my stories are bathrooms. How long do we have to wait to get bathrooms? There are no women bathrooms in the Supreme Court building, the lovely building that I work in. There are no women bathrooms in the High Court. So how long do I have to wait before someone is going to wake up and realize that women need bathrooms? It's very simple. We need our own bathrooms, and I urge anyone here who can make a difference in creating women's bathrooms and toilets, please do that, because this is no longer something that I should be asking for. It's just as much as a woman's right. And actually, it goes against my dignity now to stand here and say, please build bathrooms for the women in the justice sector. And then, of course, there is the contribution that you can make on the bench. And as Justice Shah said this morning, you have to make your presence felt as a woman. So very often in court, when my colleague is saying something, I'll quickly correct them and say, don't say that, or don't lecture the woman, now lecture the man as well. Tell the husband what he's doing wrong. Don't just focus on the woman. Or, one of my colleagues once in an inheritance case said that brothers, they really love their sisters, so it's okay if the sister gives up her inheritance. And I was like, no, it's not okay. There's no such thing. There's no general rule. We as the Supreme Court can't say that it's okay. It's her right. And if she wishes to give up her right, that's her wish. Then that has nothing to do with us. But we are not recognizing the fact that it's okay for a sister to give up her right in favor of her brother. This is a God-given right. And I mean, as a Muslim country, why are women fighting for their right of inheritance? A right that God has given them. Not law, not man, but God. Why are they fighting for it? It's really something to ask yourself about the gender perspective. So finally, before I leave, let me just share a very important study that I came across, done by Harvard Business School on what meaningful inclusion is about. And they've made an inclusivity index. And in that inclusivity index, they include certain features that they say are critical to an inclusivity, to the concept of meaningful inclusivity. And let me share with you what these are: equality, fair treatment, access, participation, opportunity. These are very different from the factors or the elements that you will hear other people or other forums talk about, such as generally you hear about diversity, inclusion, and equity. Or you'll hear what's called the JEDI. That's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. But this Harvard Business School index says, no, you have to look at equality, fair treatment, access, participation, and opportunity. And the reason you have to do this, because the objective or the outcome is what is important. And the outcome are four: respected, accepted, supported, and valued. That, my friends, is meaningful inclusion. So, as I leave, I think I've been good with the time. For the panelists to come, please think about these things. Think about respected, accepted, supported, and valued. Think about how we can bring that into the system. Think about how we can bring that change into our system. And as I leave, although this was said before, but I want to just say that when we talk about meaningful inclusion, I believe that this is my right to equality, to be treated fairly, to be given equal opportunity. I don't ask for any special privilege. I don't ask for any special circumstances or treatment. I just say, please recognize that my needs are different. And when my needs are different, my requirements will be different. So please cater to my difference. Don't make me feel different. Thank you.